Hey, good evening. Mm, Um, it's Easter here. Well, it's already over. It's the second day of Easter, but non-working day here. But I thought of making this um, talk because I can't sit in the energy of it. It started pressing me. I made a video last week in Serbian about alcoholism, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. And that becomes kind of an important topic, especially around the holidays and family holidays. So, yeah, I felt better last time, and I was in really much better energy before I came here because I'm in my brother's space and his energy, and he's really unwell, and I'm really worried about him. And especially around here in our neighborhood, there's a very big energy of depression, and yeah, he's been psychologically and physically unwell, and it's really worrying me because it's with all the serious stuff that we had around. I've never seen him like this, and it feels as if he's giving up slowly. And in these kind of energies, I know that there's pretty much nothing that I can do. I can only allow it for his own decisions, but it's yeah. So besides all of what I'm going to be talking about now, it's pressing me more when I'm here, when I'm in my flat, in my own space. It's not that I don't feel it, but it's not as much. And this has been my topic for my entire life. And I'm not going to be speaking about this topic as an expert, although I might add some things there, but as somebody who lived with alcoholism and who is still experiencing consequences of alcoholism, and who's clearing the shit of alcoholism still. So that's going to be my outlook on it. So yeah, I felt the need to talk about it for a while now, but I was waiting the proper moment, and the last time when I spoke about it, it started pressing me before I did, and I had these conversations in my mind, and I'm feeling nauseous. So something is from this side is clearing. Mm. And especially around here in the neighborhood, I'm surrounding with the same topic a lot. The consequences of the same topic, and alcoholism and other addictions too. And I'm not surrounded with it as much in Belgrade. And yeah, everything that has been happening this winter started, pushing me into the direction of talking about all I have been talking about. I've been open about it. It started to become like a pressing issue because I had sessions that were coming up with people, not people who were alcoholics, but people who lived with consequences of alcoholism, either partners of alcoholics or children or somebody who had alcoholism in their lineage, closer lineage. And yeah, like I had some sessions where I literally, was confronted again with this topic of seeing that people cannot recognize alcoholism, and those who lived with it, whether they had a parent who was an alcoholic or a grandparent or a great grandparent, they accept some things. They have higher tolerance threshold to alcoholism than other people, and don't recognize what is actually addiction, alcoholic addiction, and what isn't, because it's not alcoholism only when you are delirious and are sick from it, and you're passed out and you're like that every day. That's the last stadium of it. That's the stadium where you are having your life threatened by it. So yeah, in most of the sessions, I've had these sessions before, but not, it was one after another, one after another, one after another, until I recently had a client who is still drinking and is not willing to give up drinking, and she was not telling me that she's drinking, but of course I recognize it, and other people told me, and I couldn't do anything with her in a session, not only because of that. And then when I was to this winter, when I was to give a group talk, I walked into a space where Alcoholics Anonymous had their meetings, regular meetings, and I was supposed to give my lecture straight after them. So I had to clear the space after them, and it was really very heavy energy. Although they're just, they're sharing their stories, they're not doing anything negative there, but still the energy was it's something that I can't handle, and I had to clear it for the energy that I was supposed to download, and it was really very much felt in the space, with all my clearing and mantras and everything that I was supposed to do. So it kind of uplifted the energy, and I'm not really glad when I have to do this, because although I clear people all the time, but it's different when you're doing it in a session, because people who came to see you are willing to do something about it. But this is, I'm not willing to clear space after somebody, and after they're having, I don't know whether their session or a talk or something, because it's a responsibility of the one who's leading this or who's owning the space. And I'm gonna clear after myself, and I think it's everybody's responsibility to clear the energetic space around them, and there's not enough awareness about it here. And whenever I do that, when I sage the space, or and I sage the hell out of it, trust me, my flat is always filled with smoke. Or I don't know, I use other incense, I use frankincense or palo santo or copper. I use very strong stuff, because the energy there, it's the energy that I have to clear all the time. So yeah, whenever I come, when where I have to have a group setting, people look at me like oddly, but it's your responsibility. You have to clear this space, and none of the therapists that I cooperated with or had to give a lecture with is doing this. And I'm quite sure that they all feel it, because there are some people after whom they feel odd or feel sick or something, and it's, I don't know how they don't connect it, because you just have to clear the space, and we're all channels, especially people who are doing stuff like that. And well, I've seen lately some of them who have crystals on their desks, which is like a little bit of step forward, but still, of course, I'm not saying you have to do that. I'd do it in my office if I had an office in a hospital or something like that, but yeah, you know, I'm speaking about something else, and I'm always looking like at oddly, although some of them, they don't do it proper, they don't know what they're doing, don't do it with proper intention, or opening the circle, or inviting in, you know proper stuff. But never mind, it's still, I'm just mentioning it because it comes with this topic. And yeah, I just think that everybody's responsible for their energetic space, and they have to clear it. And I think this should be like part of it's a spiritual hygiene, and there is not much awareness about spiritual hygiene around here. Well, it's not like lately there has been more awareness on spirituality than ever before, but not around spiritual hygiene, and some things are just not enough for certain stuff, depending on what you're doing. So especially in psychotherapy, you're constantly dealing with things like I'm going to be talking about now, and mostly with people who are addicts, uh, energy therapists, and work people who are doing bioenergy or Reiki or these kind of treatments. They don't work with them as much because they don't work with these kind of heavy energies. I don't work with them as much. I work with like family members or somebody from the lineage who still carry this heavy energy in their energy space. But you know, psychotherapists, and especially people who are working with plants or psychedelics, and some that are clearing these things, well, they clear their energetic space, they know this. But psychotherapists and maybe people who are my colleagues and people who are doing hypnotherapy and stuff like that, they don't. And I know many of them who got sick because, precisely because of this, because you have to clear on your own energy space, the space where you work in, and your own channel, because you can't do this without it, because you're bound to get sick at some point. That's what I had to say. So yeah, I mean, why this is what pressed me to speak about alcoholism, because I just felt this coming into my field all the time. And of course, I have it in my field. I am a child from an alcoholic family. My father was an alcoholic. His father was an alcoholic, and even much more sick, much heavier stuff than him. His father probably was, that I never met, and God knows who else. That's from my father's side. From my mother's side, there was her grandmother who was not obnoxious or violent or anything. She was drinking because she was depressed. And yeah, that's the only one that I know about. I don't know about anyone else. Nobody that I remember was. But from my father's side, yes. And I remember there was a whole lot of shit in my life. My father was abusive. I spoke about it in other videos. Uh, he's not drinking anymore. He's not drinking since 2008, I think. But he only stopped because he almost died. His life was threatened, and now he has diabetes, which he got because of drinking, and he didn't stop when he was told to stop, and he was not receiving any treatment for it. Alcoholism is a disease. It is an addiction, but it's a disease, and it's a spiritual disease from everything that I'm seeing. And yeah, I'm not receiving this stream like I was the last time, and I'm more in my own pain and anger because of it this time around, because I'm in my house in my hometown, where I'm in in the roots of it. Yeah, this is where I've experienced all of it. And the last time I thought I'm gonna be speaking a lot more from my own anger, because I still feel a lot of anger because of it, because I'm still living the consequences of that. But I wasn't. But now I was also speaking in Serbian, and I know that they will be listening, so I was withholding some things, and now I'm possibly not going to. And yeah, since he stopped drinking, my father is a completely different person, but he was very abusive. He was abusive towards my mother. He was beating her. He was abusive towards his other wives, and he had two of them. As the last one, she's also drinking. She didn't stop, and she thinks that we don't know. She's not physically abusive, but she hates the entire world, and she's very manipulative and very mean. And I'm her least favorite person in the world. Everything that goes wrong, it's my fault. She's very jealous, and she literally hates me, and she never accepted me and my brother. Although my brother is sick and they have to take care of him from time to time, and he abused my brother. He was, you know, there were violent scenes with my brother that I observed, and but he was verbally aggressive and abusive towards me, and I literally never heard a nice word from my father, and never a supportive word. And he doesn't understand me, he doesn't understand my world, and he doesn't support me, which wouldn't be as much of a problem in itself, but he blocks me every time that he can, because he can't stand me being successful. And from time to time, he tends to be a little bit different when he supports me financially, little bit, but he never, I mean, everything that I do, and nobody believes me because he presents this to other people differently, and everybody thinks that everything I achieved with his money, and he has money, well, according to the standards around here, because he worked in Switzerland, but he was a physical worker. He didn't go to school. He started drinking very young. He was 13, and he's an abused child. He had a lot of trauma. I know where that is coming from, but I don't want to speak about it now, because there was a violent act in this in our lineage from that side. Well, I'm not going to be speaking about possibility, who's my biological father, but because there is alcoholism there too, so that I'm going to be leaving that from the side, because I researched that. I worked a lot on myself. Since I was a teenager, I was going to see a psychotherapist, and in my studies, I studied to work with other people, and I had professors, and I went to therapy. I was looking for help, and I invested a lot of time and a lot of years of my life to work on myself because of that, and be able to find the support in myself, and rectify what was I felt very much broken. And particularly because my mother was never drinking, and she was a lot more loving, and she took care about me and my brother. But since they divorced, my brother was born without oxygen, and he has a problem, and he can be independent and functions well, but we don't have very much empathetic people around us, so we never had literally any support, because my father didn't want to take care of us, never, especially when he was younger. And he was also all the time expecting me to take care of him, and my mother was doing the same thing, although she took care of him. That was her life's mission until she was alive. But she invested a lot, everything in my brother. So although she did love me, I didn't have much, so I didn't have much support from anybody. So everything I accomplished, and I accomplished a lot from the position where I was in, because I never drank. I never even thought about it. I hardly ever drank, even when I was younger. Not because of that I had aversion towards it, but I never felt drawn to it. It was never something that was uplifting, because whenever it's something that is not uplifting and not bringing me, it's not something that is, there's literally anything that is, nothing gives me that high. I don't know how that feels. The only thing that gives me that high is when I am meditating, maybe when I'm having a cacao. But it's not about being high. It's about talking to spirit and connection to the other dimension, and connection to my soul and the divine. That is my high. And although I know that now, but I was literally never like that. I never smoked, because that was like a yucky thing, and I never used any drugs. Like, I never even tried, and I never used any psychedelics. because I saw a lot of shit from my father. I saw him when he was passed out. I saw him when he did shitty things to my mother. I saw him when she had to take care of him. I mean, that was never something that was appealing to me, because he would be literally passing out and throwing up in front of us. And I didn't see, and what's fun about that, and my grandfather, that was even worse things that he did. And yeah, so I kind of developed this ability to see who has a problem with alcoholism really quickly, even when I was younger, because I invested so much time in understanding it and working on myself to get out of it. And by the, you know, when somebody holds a glass, even a glass of water, it, by the way that they hold that glass, because when an alcoholic holds a glass, it's like they're holding their lover in their hand. And even when drinking water, it's like this something. And I know when somebody has this, and I'm just kind of not tending to have even friendships or relationships with somebody like that. Whether that keeps me a little bit closed off for some people, yes, but it doesn't mean that they didn't get into my life, because alcoholism is so socially acceptable, is so widely acceptable, and like cigarettes, like smoke cigarettes, nicotine is also addictive. Although I take hape, that has 70% of nicotine, and can get you addicted. I also never got addicted, so I don't know whether that's something in my in my biology that is not prone to addiction of that kind. I mean, drugs was never something, but in my time, in, because I'm not from the capital, I'm from the insides of the country, they were not that much in. That came later, and they're in now. At that time, it was alcoholism. So that was never appealing. And well, according to some spiritual tools and some mm, it's astrology, but it's like Mayan cross. Mayan astrology is really good about that. That they have some, uh, they there are some signs that have in Mayan cross that have tendency towards addiction, while others don't. Well, I'm one of those that don't. And there are a couple of those who are really wonderful healers and have a lot of energy and move a lot of energy on other people, but they tend to have addictions. They're best of shamans, but they have tendency towards addiction. And yeah, I can't speak about addiction to narcotics, because I haven't been spending too much time with them. I don't know anybody. I didn't have clients who had people uh, who had problems, family problems with that, so I don't have that much experience in it. Although my biggest part of understanding the psychology of alcoholics, of addictions, is when I was spending time with Alcoholics Anonymous, because they, like I mentioned, now they exist around here. While I was a teenager, and in my when I was studying, they didn't exist. But around 2000 and I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8, they did. They were formed here from people who were coming from these big international NGOs who were uh, um, former addicts, and they formed it. They needed it because of their own need to have meetings, and it's a good program. The 12-step program is a really good program, and it's helpful. And I've spent a year in Al-Anon group, which is a group for support group for families of addicts, mostly alcoholics. And I've spent some time in groups with alcoholics, listening to their stories to understand the urge and the way they function psychologically. And from what I've seen from the stories of my clients, from my own experience, from experience of my neighbors and relatives, and from these stories, I saw that, you know, once you clear the addiction, you're not an alcoholic anymore, you don't drink anymore. The psychological addiction remains, and the psychological what's the word, habits, the characteristics remain. You pretty much have the same personality, because alcohol does change your personality. It affects, it creates mental disease, it can create dementia, it can create all kinds of other mental diseases, because it's something to your brain. And I don't know how the chemistry, and how, I didn't research that, so I can't speak about that, how it does affect your front lobes and disconnects you from emotional part of the brain, and it affects that. So they have problem of connecting with people. They have they lack empathy. Many of them were also children of alcoholics, and it's like it's not socially induced into them, but it's something that is acceptable. So the form of behavior that they saw, so they pretty much started doing the same thing, because it's something that they were experiencing all their lives. Even when they speak about those things, they don't understand that they still have psychological characteristics of somebody who is traumatized and abused, and who's an abuser, because many of them have been abuser. They never speak from the position of the abuser. They rarely apologize, and they rarely see the need that they need to apologize. Yes, there is a step in 12-step program of doing that, but maybe I didn't spend enough time there, but I really didn't see enough willingness in those people to do something like that, because they're not willing to accept that they've done wrong to somebody else, and that the consequences of what they've done are lasting, that they're not something that's going to be erased tomorrow. Many of them don't even remember, because they pass out and they don't know, they're doing things unconsciously, and they don't know what's going on. They don't have no memory of what they've done. There's a lot of incest, a lot of trauma, a lot of incest. Many of them are sexually abused, and they have been sexually abusing others, their children too, and many of them don't remember doing that. I know this because I have worked with people who have experienced this, and all of them, there was always alcoholism there. And not everywhere, not all of them, but mostly, especially with those who are aggressive, who have tendency towards aggression, and who are affected in such a way that they pass out, that they don't know what they're doing, that they're completely out of their body, they're not present at that moment, and something else takes over. There are a lot of entities, a lot of heavy energy, and a lot of entities. I think alcoholism itself is an entity that takes over you, and those entities, and that entity is not only that person, but it protrudes to the lineage. It's as if you have these it's not plasma, but it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's yucky, something really, it's like plasma, but not good kind of plasma. It's sticky and yucky, and it's making me sick at the moment, and it's on everybody. It's in the lineage. It's literally in the lineage. And I had a psychology professor who used to tell me that most of the time the way he perceived me is if I had a wet blanket over me all the time, because I was not depressed myself, but there was something that I just couldn't remove, like wet blanket over me. And that's also because, besides my brother who's sick, which especially when you don't have any support, and there is no a lot of empathy around there, it can be changed. He's going to be like that for the rest of his life. There's a lot of depression and trauma from other people there too. So it's like the depression is also a disease. It's also the consequence of alcoholism. And there are other mental diseases. Schizophrenia is one of them too, because with all of the trauma you get a lot very fragmented. And yeah, these are the consequences, some of them, and these are genetically transmitted, and alcoholism is also genetically transmitted. It's not only socially induced. It's not only what you learn. It's not only learned behavior, but it's also genetic. Sometimes it can skip a generation or two or three, but then it appears somewhere. Of course, there is a soul agreement to that, and of course, there is like a trigger for that, usually some kind of trauma or stress, but it's usually with the people who are a little less mentally stable than others. So, as in something that I do, I work with people who are mentally stable, so I can't work with people who are not mentally stable. And if their mental mind won't lose control, so that, I mean, with people who are having psychosis, I can't work because their mental mind won't lose losing control, which is okay, which is good. They should have control, and I don't want to make more problem than they already have. But there are some also who can only loosen up control when they fall asleep. And this is what happened with this last client. Like in the beginning with the induction, she fell asleep and I couldn't reach her. She was completely passed out, which is not good because I didn't have any contact with her. Even when some clients sometimes dozes off, I do have a contact with her. I didn't have any contact because there were a lot of, there's also black magic that is following all this. How is black magic connected to alcoholism? I haven't discovered. But every single time where there is alcoholism in the lineage, there is also black magic. Either that somebody in this lifetime, like closer relative, known to them, is performing black magic, or a grandparent, great grandparent, or somebody that way down the line was performing a black magic. So these entities came into the line, and they're very manipulative, by the way, and can confuse you and convince you to allow them to come and then take over. And it's basically because you don't control your channel. They take over your channel, but they can also somehow protrude to the lineage. Of course, these people from the soul plane come who have similar experiences, whether from past lives, whether they have a similar experience, or they created some problem for themselves or others because they were addicts or alcoholics, or they were victims of this and are feeling very powerless in front of alcoholism and a mental disease, or have experienced all kinds of consequences. So they're repeating this pattern in order to be healed. When you start repeating something like this, and when you come in a group, in a family or in a group that is repeating this lesson, you do this because soul wants something healed, and the soul usually wants something healed. How I know this is I've had a client who came because of some car accident that he was in. But also what we touched upon is that he had epilepsy and epileptic attacks that were really severe because he passes out and he doesn't remember anything. But they were happening to him only a couple of times when he was really young, and only when he was drunk. And when he started drinking, he started having these seizures that landed him in a hospital. And when he stopped drinking, and didn't drink at all, he would stop having them. If he only took a sip, one sip of alcohol, he would have an epileptic attack. So we inquired about that, and what came out was that he had these lines of lives, several lives, one after another, where he was addicted to alcohol, and he created a whole lot of mess for himself and others. He created a whole lot of problems, and there was like, he was abusive. He was negligent, and he killed somebody out of because he was not aware what he was doing. And because when he would get drunk, he would think that, those are his words, he would think that it gives him confidence, and in actually, and he thought that he's very appealing, while it was really on the contrary. He was really obnoxious, and people couldn't stand him, and he had these ideas that were not very, very good. And he just, it would give him false confidence, and he would start abusing everybody to have it his way. So he would create a whole lot of problems, and then he would come back again and again and again to heal that, and then he would come back into the same scheme, because he would just repeat it. It was like his karmic pattern. And then his soul gave him epilepsy. He decided to have epilepsy as an on-off, switch-off button for his addiction, for alcoholism. So he only had epileptic attacks only when he drank. When he didn't, everything was fine, and he was functioning perfectly. And he was quite an amazing young man, and now he knows that he won't, I mean, it's like he decided that this life was going to be like the end of that addiction. So there's one. Then I had another, when your soul gives you another kind of either a disease, or you're an invalid or something, so that you can hurt anybody. Even if you decide to start drinking again, you don't have physical strength to do anything to anyone, because they would be very violent while they were under influence of alcohol. So they would kill people or something, or hurt people, or not necessarily end up in prison themselves, but they would kill other people, and then destroy other lives. Not wanting to do that, but just in the heat of the moment, because they had temper issues, and the alcoholism enhances that. And that seems like very harsh from our point of view, but from soul's point of view, it's not, because it's rectifying this habit. And this is why we come back. This is why we come here to rectify this bad behavior, bad habits that we carry within our own energy field. For some people, it's this. For other people, it's, I feel powerless. I feel a victim. I feel that I can't do anything, and I cannot perform my duties. I cannot shine. I cannot have the life that I want to have because of this, because I'm influenced by the people, or it's abuse or something. So there is like a common thread in all of this, and I've seen, like, I'm not a therapist that works with lineages, and I'm not a therapist that family constellator, but still this comes out in sessions, and I have to deal with it. So yeah, this was something from past life, but even with those who are having this in their family lineage, that means that they have something similar in their as a karmic in their karma, in their past lives, as a karmic pattern. So sometimes it's that, like, them themselves have been alcoholics, or some kind of other kind of addicts, because alcoholism also carries sometimes it's other narcotics or um, medications or sexual addiction, because it goes hand in hand, or gambling. It also can go hand in hand, not whatever, or with some obesity, because it creates all other physical diseases and it creates hormonal imbalance and all kinds of other imbalances. Like with these, my mother was uh, very she basically gave up on her life very early on, and she was placed in a mental institution because of her depression, and she had other other problems, other diseases because of that, like a heart disease and high blood pressure. And she was also using medication, prescribed medication, but that's also an addiction. Now I'm seeing my brother doing the same, and it's heartbreaking. Like I said, I didn't have any support in anything that I wanted to do. I accomplished a lot, and I don't think that I haven't accomplished a lot. Although sometimes I find myself in this because I don't have enough money. I didn't earn enough money from all of this, and I am proud of myself. But I can't say that I know how to show it, because I've never seen and I've never heard anybody being proud of me or telling me that. On the contrary, they in a I'm the one who's healthy and worked on her health in a very sick system. And when a system is, a family is a system, so when a system is sick, they're going to see health as something threatening, and they're throwing all kinds of shitty stuff at me. And I literally recently heard my father, like this winter, telling me that I am his biggest enemy in his life. And there's absolutely no reason for that, because I mean, all I did was study and accomplish and do stuff, and I never did anything that is and any kind of carries any kind of sickness in it. But he is sick, and when everybody is sick and when everybody else is miserable, and you're trying to be okay and you're trying to be happy, they're going to be obstructing you. Because when you're going to be in conflict with an healthy system, because they have created this way of functioning that's keeping the system in place, that's keeping their mental mind in place, that's keeping them sort of sane and functional. And when something gets removed from that, they don't want to work on themselves and admit themselves that they have a problem and have to do something about it, and you're confronting them with that, they're going to be hating you, and you're going to be in conflict with them, and they're going to be trying to pull you back, because they're going to have to work a lot to create a new way of behavior. I'm seeing that with me. I was seeing that with myself, and I'm seeing that with my brother, and I'm seeing that with every of my client who comes with a similar topic. So yeah, it creates a lot of problems. Alcoholism is a disease that is incurable. So it's an addiction that's not curable. Even when you stop drinking, you can have a relapse, and after 10 or 20 years, because you have a psychological addiction that can't be removed completely. This is why you need a support system, either I don't know, 12-step program or something else. And this is why it is a spiritual disease, because something has to fill the place and transmute that entity. And what's lacking in these kind of systems is love. There's no love there. And it's a big disconnect with the divine. This is what it's intended for. I don't see alcohol, although yeah, when you use wine, there are certain psychedelics and certain plants. Wine also is a cure. it was used for healing. But anything that you do use without a measure, anything that you use unconsciously, and anything that you start abusing starts controlling you, and you're not controlling it. And that was the problem. That's what my client was saying. He thought that he's in control of everything, and he wanted to control everybody else, while all the time he was under control of something else. And this is what's going on in all of these families, alcoholic families. There's always somebody who wants to control everybody else there, because they cannot control themselves. And with partners or spouses, there's usually codependency, because they can only have people who are either vulnerable themselves, so that they accept them, or alcoholics themselves, or create them into their victims. So if they cannot keep up with them and their kind of behavior, if they're not alcoholics themselves or have some mental, they become their victims, like my mother did. And usually when they are aggressive, when they're abusers, they never do it with people who are mentally and physically stronger than them. They have to bring them down to make them feel like they're physically weaker, or they're weaker than them. So if you are in a system where you have a lot more psychological stability and power than everybody else there, and they have a disease, they're going to be picking on you because you reflect their disease to them. You recommend this is besides what I do all the time for my clients. I reflect, and I also reflect to my family. And I didn't realize this before, and yeah, but I'm not very accepted in my family. I mean, I'm not on good terms with my father. We're not speaking at the moment because of some events with my brother, because he's very much ashamed of my brother, and he had other ideas. Both of my parents had other ideas for myself, and I constantly had to fight with them to have my own life and having my own way. So I compromise, but eventually I compromised a lot, because my brother still needs help, and he gets picked up a lot by my father because of that, because through him they can control me. And it's for me, that's constant internal struggle and pain creates a lot of stress for me. But lately, I've discovered a lot of people in my field around me who are actual alcoholics, with whom I would normally not have any encounters, but they find a way. They tend to be very manipulative, also narcissistic behavior goes with it a lot, but narcissistic disorder, not this healthy narcissism, but narcissistic disorder. Like, they have a sense of entitlement and think that they're better than anybody else. They would be manipulative and verbally abusive and gaslighting and putting you down. And there are also certain professions that are more prone to this than others. Like, a lot of them are in artistic professions, especially with actors. Some of them don't have to be alcoholics, but those who would be children of alcoholics would be like that. And then with psychotherapists, there are a lot of those too. And in business world, yes, but you'd be surprised a lot less than in these, and even in spiritual world, because many people use spirituality as bypassing. Many people start with spirituality because they have their own problems and they're looking for healing, but then they come certain way and some powers start developing, and then they exchange this addiction for the addiction to power, It goes, addiction to power goes with it, but many of them don't quit alcoholism and they start drinking. And the problem is because it's so socially acceptable and it's promoted, it's sold to us, that they don't even think that they're alcoholics if they are not, I don't know, with all of these problems that I just mentioned. If somebody is a weekend drinker and they can go throughout the week, I mean, usually what's thought that you're an alcoholic if you can go throughout the week and you cannot have a day without a drink. But that's, if you drink only for a weekend, you can't wait for the weekend to come to pass out from alcohol, and you pass out from alcohol and don't remember what happened to you. I've literally had clients who'd come like we're not addicts, we're not, but they had episodes where they were completely passed out from, I don't know, some easier drug or alcohol, and they don't remember what happened to them. Some of them even were sexually abused and they don't remember that, and I can't do anything and I can't mention it, although I feel it and I see it. I receive an information about it because I can't go there because they're not open. I can't, if somebody doesn't ask for help in something, I can't go there before somebody is ready for that. And they don't think that's a problem. Oh, but that happens often. Not as often as every day, not as often as every month, but every couple of months. It's like in waves. That's addiction. That's also addiction. And then it grows. It can grow from there. Especially when you are feeling a little bit unstable, when things are happening, they're rocking your boat, where you have a little bit more stress, or you feel a little bit more uncomfortable, or you're not feeling successful enough, or some sadness or something. If you have to reach out for alcohol or something else, for some drug or medication or something to help you through it, you are an addict. And it's different for everybody because our physical and energetic systems are different. So some people are more prone because it's like allergy. Like some people are more prone to allergies, and some, like I'm allergic to alcohol. When I have a sip of alcohol, if I have a glass of wine, it wouldn't make me feel better and make me feel and laugh more and be more relaxed. I'd be feeling sleepy and it puts me down. And this is why I never had any need to do something like that, because I don't want to feel like that. And some people are different and they're not going to be noticing when they're becoming lured into it. And it's by design. This is how it's made. And I think it's deliberately given. It's deliberately, although it can be created from natural things, but it's deliberately given. Just like, I don't know, with all, from very little that I know about Native Americans, when white people or people from Europe came there, the alcohol was the first thing that they handed to them that they didn't, well, from what I've been told, they didn't know before, and that created a whole lot of problems with them. And then, I'm only assuming that there are a whole lot of lineages now that are having problems with addictions that started way, 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 way back. But it's by design because it's disconnecting you from your soul, and it's disconnecting you from divine and connecting you to something else. It's connecting you to a false realm, and it's connecting you to an entity. And it's giving access to your lineage. How it's giving access to your lineage? Well, I'll give you an example over another session that I had with a client recently this summer. She came because of a loss that she experienced herself, and somehow throughout the session we came to this great grandmother of hers that she didn't remember, and it happened when I asked about, because she had certain abilities, and I was wondering whether there was somebody in the lineage who had them. And then this great grandmother came up that was a healer. She was using herbalist, and she was helping others with herbs, and she was successful in it. But then when she was becoming older, she was feeling less successful, and there were other some cases that she couldn't help people, and she started feeling helpless there, and she started using alcohol to help herself feel a little better. But since the time was passing, she uh, would pass out. She would start using more, she would pass out from alcohol, and when she passed out, she didn't know what was going on with her. And at that moment, because I was feeling some entity there, at that moment some entity attached to her, and she created a contract with this entity that to give access to the entirety of her lineage in exchange to let her do what she was doing. She was not doing that in aware state. She was doing that when she was passed out. And this is how the entity got the access to the entire lineage. And yes, in the lineage of this client, there was problem with addiction, even drug addiction. Not herself, but in her closer family. And that's how it goes. And also, where there's a lot of war and war trauma, especially like in these areas where I live, in my country, we had First World War, Second World War, then civil wars, and bombing. People use alcohol as means to as a survival tool. They could survive through this and do to each other things that they did only because they were drinking heavily. They were not thinking that they were becoming addictive to it. They were thinking that they're helping themselves go through something and heal something, and it's still acceptable. And like we have a whole lot of movies, especially from these events that where we would see people constantly, drinking this Serbian rakia schnapps. I don't know how to translate it into. It's a traditional drink here. Like as a medicine, it can be used as a medicine, but it's doing something else to you also. So where there's a lot of trauma, there is a lot of mental disease too in all this that I'm talking about. And besides this, besides the topic, where there's a lot of war trauma, there can be mental disease down the lineage, even with people who with descendants that didn't experience war, because it's in the energy, and it goes down the energy line until somebody, it's not only until somebody, possibly there's a lot of them who are acting it out, but nobody's not knowing. People don't know what's going on and what's happening. So either they have a mental disease, or they have a breakdowns, or they have problems in, I don't know, finances or success or relationships, or they become addicts. But it's usually either a mental disease or becoming an addict. Why? Because it's an energetic system. Family and the lineage is an energetic system. Not necessarily a sphere, but it's an energetic system. And usually when there's a trauma, there is a leak, a hole, punched hole in this energy system. I don't know at what level, it's different, but it's usually, from what I've seen, an astral level. So it's not necessarily on that person. Now I'm speaking from my experience, because I've done every possible thing that I could do with my own and my channel. But in the energy system, there is a leak. So it's constantly like I'm pouring it down, and I'm pouring it down, and I'm pouring it down. Yes, I'm grounding it, but it's constantly somewhere, as if I'm constantly pouring in an empty cup. So I pour on one end, and it goes down through on another end, because there is a leak in the lineage, which is an alcoholism in this case. In some other cases, it's something else. But I also had clients who had like brothers or sisters and who are younger now, but they have mental disease, and there is either a black magic or a war trauma. Well, usually where there's black magic, there's a war trauma. or sexual trauma connected to it. Well, sexual, war, trauma, they're all everything in one. It's all big, everything in one. You have it all. Yeah, because it's a whole lot of yucky things that happen there. Yeah. So it's how the souls design, how they plan these coming into these families so that it can get healed. And usually it breaks down on one who accepts to it's not a scapegoat, but it's somebody who just wants to, like this client who wanted to stop the line of his lives, but there's somebody in the lineage who wants to stop the line of the this bad habit or addiction or this whatever is happening. And they do usually because they also have their own karma to clear in this way, and they have similar they have done similar things before, so they're also clearing their own karma. And because they accepted to be a healer, if you cleared all of your karma, all of your stuff, and you accepted to heal this because of some false belief, you can get out of it and you don't have to do that. It's impossible for one person to heal the entire family lineage because there are hundreds and hundreds of people there. And it goes, it can go way back to stars, not only in this plane. And you don't have to do that because it's impossible for one person to do it. You can do it endlessly in eternity and never do it. It's responsibility to each and every one of them to take their own stuff and clear it, and because it's their own lesson. And of course they do, because it's personal karma. It's karma of that soul. And this is a wrong belief. And until you understand that it's a wrong belief, that it's something that you accepted because of your wrong beliefs, because of the choices that you were making from energy that you don't need anymore, from some wrong actions, wrong belief, because it's a wrong thought, then you cannot do anything about it. But when you realize that, then you can change it. And of course, if you learn your karmic lessons that led to it before. And usually the ancestry that came before you doesn't want you to clear their own shit. Yeah, you kind of, when you heal yourself, you help them, you heal them, you open a little bit more space because you close that patch that's in the family, in the line, by not by healing each and every one of them, but by healing yourself. And they want you to thrive. They want to give you blessings. They want to help you in this, not lock you in it. Yes, there are those that want to, who were not doing good things, who are not good, clear souls, who are not mature souls, who are still immature and unhealed souls. But usually in my sessions, I don't work with those. So I can't speak about that. They're not allowed in this space. And I don't do this, it's higher beings that do this. So this is how I know, because I worked with other clients with this. I'm also doing it for myself. So when there is a patch, it's not you who's sawing it, it's these higher beings. But yeah, it's harder when there's people live in the system, living people who are not willing to do their part of the work and who are obstructing you. Honestly, with my father, sometimes I feel like it's his life mission to obstruct me, especially my stepmother. They're very immature. They're very unhealed. They have a lot of problems. My father can't even walk now, but he's still like in this very, and I can't handle that energy anymore. The more I clear for myself, I can't handle that energy because it makes me sick. And they can't handle my energy because it's too high vibrational for them. It's frustrating them. And it's not even anything personal towards me. It's like they can't stand this energy. And I can't be in my father's house and in the village where he lives, or I spent my childhood there, because there are a lot of patches, there are a lot of portals that are negative ones. They didn't open them, but they, especially because of what I do, I get attacked there, not by them, but by these beings, and I'm not well. I can't handle that energy, and they're making them do this because they're not controlling themselves. It's these entities that are taking over control, and sometimes there are a lot of astral travelers and people who are in seeking of energy, and especially people who are from certain lineages who used to do some things before, either in their past lives or had somebody who was doing some work with other people and had a lot different kind of energy, more energy, and they tend to attach to them because of energy. They target these kind of families, and that's by design. And then they block you. They tend to block you, to block your mission, because they know what you're going to do, and because they want your energy. And that sometimes was making them, that sometimes was creating mental diseases also, and maintaining them. That doesn't mean that you don't need any help in dealing with them, of course, but if for any kind of help, people need to ask for help. You need to have permission to help those people, and they have to admit to themselves first that they need help and in what area they need help. So that's very, it's very difficult. So that's why I say I'm going to be in conflict with this entire system, because it's, this system is you. It's not only, it's only not only you, it's not only them. And once you get healed and you cannot fit in that system anymore, you're not part of that system anymore. You cannot come back in, because you're not, you're not fitting in it anymore. And yeah, you can feel a whole lot of lonely, unless you have your own built new family, new system or something. You can feel a whole lot of lonely. And especially in a society like this, and I mean, like alcohol is promoted everywhere as something socially acceptable. I mean, you have an event and you promote health and healthy food and healthy stuff, and then you serve alcohol after that to mingle, because it's used, people mingle around it. And so I'm not judging it. I'm just saying it's so acceptable. Even when the by the way, the Alcoholics Anonymous, when they started, like, I was not the initiator of it. I'm not somebody who founded this group, but I was with them, and I spent only a year, because my mother was alive at that moment, and these women that I was with, they had these psychological characteristics that were like really controlling. And my mother wasn't like that. I couldn't handle that. They expected too much from me. The books and all of the stuff that they had needed translation, and because I speak very good English, they wanted me to put up a lot of work in translating that. There were other people too, but they were giving like big chunks of work, and they didn't realize how much work that is. So yeah, I just stopped going after a while. I mean, I have proof here. I mean, I have my one day at a time. And when I felt that it's enough for me, I stopped going, because I work on my spirituality, and even then I wasn't doing that what I'm doing now, but I had my ways. I was meditating. I'm meditating since I was 20. So I didn't need that to connect me with my soul. And I don't still, I mean, I do reach out for tradition and some stuff, that because they feel good, I want to feel a part of something, but I don't need an external authority to connect to me with God. And this is all what I'm doing now. Yeah, I don't present myself as an external authority to connect you with God and your soul. Yes, you do therapy because you need certain help. What I promote is autonomy, and I promote people relying on themselves. It's the problem is that people don't believe their intuition, don't believe themselves, and they're so used to somebody telling them what to do and doing stuff instead of them. And it's precisely what I don't want to do. Although I do receive information, I could give, I could function as a medium and a channel for other people. I don't want to do this because I don't want to rob them of their own power, and I don't want to take responsibility for their decisions and their lives. And around here, a lot of people just want precisely that, because they want a leader, they want somebody else to guide their lives. You have your own resources, and you have, I mean, I'm constantly having reminders, and I'm having a lot of those to prove the existence. Although the past couple of years a lot less than before, because the energy is, because a lot of clearing that is going on globally, the energies around are so heavy that sometimes I just, I like all this. This is why I'm speaking about this, because this is what is also clearing and what needs to be clear, because this is the what creates a majority of problems around here. That's one thing. The other thing, when I spoke about war trauma, why I mentioned it, because I also had a client who, for instance, found also, because we were working on some of her abilities, returning some of her abilities, so, and we were looking for a block in those, and she found about her some great grandmother that she, I don't know if she remembered her or not, but she was in the Second World War, and she was in concentration camp that she survived. But there she had a relationship with one of the guards, and they actually had a loving relationship. He was protecting her, um, but she was married, and she was coming back after that into her family, to her husband, and she had a child from that relationship that she couldn't bring home, precisely because of that, and she had to give it up. And this child was given for an orphanage or an adoption. They don't know what happened to that child, and that came out in the session. So that was what was creating the block, not only within herself, but with these kind of things, with addictions, with traumas, with war traumas, and mental diseases. And so there are a lot of secrets, and secrets are what creates blockages in your personal channel, but also in your lineage, in your entire lineage, in this system, energetic system. And this is what creates trauma, creates holes, but secrets create these blockages that are like stones sometimes. And they have to be, the light has to be shed on that, and they have to come out to the surface. And there might be things that you don't know, because how can you know if there was, I mean, because of all of the wars around here, we don't know our lineage. We don't know people who were our ancestors. We don't know who they were. We don't know where they originated from, because there were a lot of concentration camps and a lot of murder, and people who knew each other, who were neighbors or relatives, were killing each other, and they wanted to hide all this. And I also recently had a session with somebody whose great grandfather was creating lists for people to be shot by the Nazis, and he was chosen because he had a big family and big estate. So in order for him to keep, he was tortured, but in order for them to let him go, and for him to keep his family safe and to keep his estate, he had to do this in exchange. But eventually he started doing this to people that he felt a little bit jealousy of or envious of. So there were a lot of, I mean, this came out when she, because as a child, when she remembered him, she was feeling off beside him, and she was always trying to avoid him. So we looked for the cause of that, and that's what came out. And sometimes, that can come out in a session. She didn't remember this. It was not something that somebody told her. And stuff like that can come out in a session, not as a memory, but as an information. And some people can't receive all that, because there are a lot more stuff that was added there so that you don't receive this information, or you have a little bit more healing to do or stuff to do before you receive that. Sometimes it's your abilities that they want to hide. Sometimes it's your inheritance of some kind. Maybe not from this life, but from God knows when. But that something was placed, so you never. But people don't realize when they say never how far that never goes to, especially people who have abilities. And then then when the channel is open, where there's a rupture, where there is a hole, all kinds of other beings can come there. These are, on some level, these are parasites. You see them as parasites. But in some lower levels, they create these events like this, and it's in our hologram. So you have to, on a certain level, you have to fix that hologram so that they cannot get in. And they will be pushing constantly to get in, especially if they're not only in your channel but in the lineage, because they want to exist through you. That's what's the deal with that. And when the light comes and sheds all of this, it dissolves it. Light doesn't fight, it dissolves it. So that's what I've realized working with my clients and on myself. And alcohol is really big evil, and it's really created with this evil intent. I don't know the history of it and when it started, how it come, but it is like fire water. It's an evil from an evil side. And all the other addictions, like all the chemistry and stuff, nothing that forcefully influences your brain is good. And from what I've seen with people who, for instance, come to a session who are using, they think they'll be using LSD, like microdosing, or marijuana microdosing to enhance the memories. That blocks the memories, doesn't help them with the memories. I don't know how, but from weed for marijuana, what I saw is because you start using it without unconsciously and abusing it, and that entity is a spirit. I mean, every plant is a spirit, has its own spirit, but that spirit is very authoritative and is very she's very controlling, and she's very she can get abusive and very jealous, and doesn't allow anybody else there. So if you're not showing respect, and if you're not using it as a healing and a healer, you're in trouble, because it's gonna take over you, and it's very arrogant. Yeah, that was the word that I was looking for. Alcoholism also gives arrogance, but this is a little bit of different kind. So yeah, I never used any kind of drugs or anything. It's psychedelics. The only psychedelic that I ever used was ayahuasca. Only when I'm called, and I deleted that. I might be recording it again. I was literally called to it, and I heard her, and every time I went, she'd come in my dreams, and I had a message, and I only do it when I feel the need, when I'm called. And I never did it out, in its natural habitat, because I never had the opportunity to do that, and I don't feel the need for it anymore as much. But there was a whole lot of heavy energy that I had to clear from it. That being literally really, really helped me with the immensity of love that she was showing and pouring into me. And I do have immense respect for it. And it is a natural thing. It's an organic thing. But for anything else, I can't speak from the experience, because I never used any of it. I don't know, just speaking the experience of some people that I worked with, and from where I met people who were an addicts. It's in my shamanic trainings, because people who are using drugs, they like shamanism because it gives them permission to use psychedelics, and they abuse it. And they have very twisted system, morality system. Um, it's different. It hasn't developed properly, and it is there is in psychology there are steps for development of morality, and it's distorted with them because of the influences on the brain. So you can read the book Hands of Light by Barbara Ann Brennan. She speaks about healing with hands, but she speaks a lot about seeing auras and the energy system. I don't see auras, but she's very she describes a lot how these auras and energies of people who were using different drugs and people who are alcoholics looks like. I don't see that, but I feel it, and I see it from my experience with clients that it's the truth. And she was saying that it takes 9 years for drugs, chemical drugs, to get out of your system, like cocaine, heroin, and stuff like that. Others more. And alcohol too. 9 years to you, so that your energy can be cold, healed, and cleared from alcohol. And that also goes, from what I've seen, to the family system. Like, this is what I meant when I had you have, there's like this some plasmic stuff, yucky, like squiddy stuff on you in an entire system. And that's even worse when you have this rupture somewhere and the energy flows out. So this is why I'm saying that this is a spiritual disease, and it needs repairing. The energetic system needs repairing from higher beings. That can, yes, you do it with all kinds of different kinds of therapies, but this is what beings that are not incarnate, the discarnate light beings are doing. This human being can't do this. And family constellations can be good for this, especially if there are a lot of secrets, so that they can come out to the surface. But basically, this is what your guides are doing, and your council of elders, and then even angelic higher beings do. Not only your personal guide. It's like it's an entire spiritual operation that needs to happen there. But things need to be shed to light. And if some soul will decide they don't want to be healed, or why this happens because of emotions that are still there, heavy emotions that are hard to heal, that it's hard for them to face those emotions because they're judging themselves because of the things that they've done. And the energy connections, they plug into you because they have something plugged into them, and their energy is being drained by those entities, so they have to plug into somebody else to maintain themselves. And they do it through conflicts and through pulling you into drama. And they judge themselves on some level. They know, or they're not aware, but they feel it in their heart. We all know when we're doing something wrong to somebody or ourselves. So they judge themselves, and they're punishing themselves. And on some level, from what I've seen from my clients, is that it's somewhere in their past lives, or they've done something that they're still feeling guilty for, and they're not aware of it. It's in their subconscious, and they're punishing themselves for it. So even when they go into spirituality, they can go into bypassing, but they can use a lot of techniques to, they're very harsh. So they can use fasting, or to literally to drain themselves. They can use all kinds of things to to stop, to just to stop them from feeling what they're supposed to feel. And these emotions are big grief and sadness, toxic shame. They're very ashamed, and they're feeling unworthiness, and powerless because they were abused themselves. And on one level, knowing all that I know, I feel a lot of compassion, even for my immediate family, my stepmother and my father. But in the moments when I'm being, my buttons get constantly pressed and pressed and pressed, they push because they want to attach to me, they want to get into back into attaching to me. Yeah, I just sometimes it's hard, and especially when I get in, straight into the heart of it. But and I have worked a lot on myself. Can you imagine how it's for people who haven't done any work on themselves? That's a whole lot of drama and a whole lot of shit that comes out. And yeah, these emotions actually are something that's creating all of this, and that's what needs to be worked on. But there's also, because I worked with my brother, and he never drank, because he's sick, but he also never had the desire to. There are some people who are disabled who do drink. He never did. He never looked for curing something like that, and but he doesn't believe that he can be helped. He doesn't believe that he can be cured. So you have to have a certain connection. Although he is connected, he does have this faith. That's why it is a spiritual disease, and there's a whole lot of things, other things that get there and touch and block you from getting to that, and feeling accomplishing what you're supposed to accomplish. Because in certain lineages, in certain souls that come who have a big mission, not lineages but souls who have a big mission, there are certain fractions and entities that know that they're coming, and whose task is to block them and stop them from accomplishing. So they're going to be constantly having a lot more problems if they don't intercept them at birth or before in childhood, like they did with my brother, or sometimes they kill them. So there are certain nations, races that are more targeted than others because of their genetic codices. They're pure and organic. They're from the lines of the original creators. They're more connected to other dimensions and stars, and they're original creators of this, of cedars, like Native Americans, like some African groups, like original, like this, our not Slavic, not all Slavic nations, but we're not even Slavic nation, we're lyrics, like the very old nations who are carrying the genetics of these old, like old, who are like first inhabitants of this earth, of this planet. They're going to be more, because it's also a karmic pattern that's being repeated from all of the wars and others that were happening in galaxy. They'll be picked on more, and they will be constantly, they'll be trying to intercept them. And like what I've worked, because of what I do, when I do sessions for myself, I don't do them with therapists from around here, because I get judged, and they look at me differently because of what I do, even when they don't know who I am. Some of them know who I am, and they tend to put down. I don't feel them. I had bad experiences, so I don't feel them as helpful. Or they have prejudices for what I do, and tend to try to convince me and block my intuition. So I don't want to work with that, with those kind of people. So I work with people from abroad. So I work with two therapists from Canada who had experiences in working with Native Americans, and they were saying this. It's not my experience. It's not my my wording. It's theirs. They say that, especially with ritual abuse, the satanic ritual abuse, there are some people who are more prone to this because precisely because of what I said. And Native Americans are one of those, women and men, but men are also targeted by women who are predators from other group, and they're sent to them and all kinds of things. That's another story, but I'm not going to go into this now. But because they carry this different energy that they are seeking, that they want to use for themselves, for to sustain them. They call it starfire. So this is why. And then you carry a specific mission that they want to intercept. And this is why, especially lately, some things have been happening a lot. And I've been preserving this since 2018. And this in 2019, I worked in 2020, 21, I worked with those therapists from Canada. And because I had the same problem, they mentioned it. This is how we got to they mentioned it to me in my sessions, and they mention it in their, one of them is mentioning this in her podcast too, because she sees these lineages targeted a lot more than others, especially there. And this is why some things are still remaining, some things are still being repeated. But it all comes down to one thing, and it's trauma that creates rupture in your energetic field, and then you are more accessible, and you're not as strong. And even if they're not intercept your mission and intercept what you do, they create whole lot of problems for you, and they can also target other people from your family or immediate family, or I don't know, other people that are close to you, and create problems for you, so that they drag you into their own movie, that they drag you back into, so you're hooked, and they can hook into you. So that's one of the things is there. So what's the other thing that I need to say about alcoholism? It's that it needs to be tended all the time. You basically have to be aware all the time. You have to have a mentor or a sponsor, and you have to connect to the higher power all the time. And you have to pour in a lot of love into yourself and around. Because if you had experience like this, whether you have been an alcoholic and you're cured, or on the path of recovery, it's telling you that is the truth what I'm saying. Or if you have had a trauma from it, and you're a child of an alcoholic, or you had it in your field, you have this experience because you've been given the codices for healing it. If you come out through the other side, you survive it. You're not completely the same, but you are, let's say you healed it and you've been through the experience and you've done the work. You've been given codices to heal it. So by your very presence, you'd be healing other people with it, by only speaking about it, by only showing up, by spreading this new energy, this new you. This is why we had this experience, to be able to heal it. This is what the soul wants, to heal it. This is what I meant when I said the soul wants it healed. But the soul is usually selfless. The soul is not what we expect it to be. Yeah, there is They can be a spiritual ego. A soul can't have an ego, but these are immature souls. The souls are really selfless, and soul wants, like the sun, to shine and spreads it to everybody. So you are giving this so that you can heal others. That means that you have to speak about it, that you have to be frank about it and open and constantly share about it. There are many people who don't do this, even when this is why the psychological patterns and psychological characteristics of theirs are not healed, because they're not working on that part. Because they still carry shame and guilt inside them that they're not tackling with. And this is why you constantly have to have somebody to speak about it. But this is why I have sponsors or others who are dealing with it, or somebody who's trustworthy. And the biggest problem of these people are that they don't have, they don't trust anybody. I've also seen, like in the spiritual groups, that there are a lot of people who are alcoholics themselves and don't know it, or know it and want to admit it and use other people. And it's so socially acceptable that I literally participated in a fire ceremony, shamanic fire ceremony, where the bottle of wine was going around and everybody was taking a sip because it's so acceptable. It's how you get loose, you loosen up a bit, you know. Or I don't even me, sometimes I do this when I sit with other people and I don't drink, but you know, sometimes like everybody is having some alcohol drink that doesn't have that much percentage of alcohol in it, and sometimes I do it. I take a drink with them because I want to be included into the group. And this is how it starts, because you want to be part of some group and you want to be included. This is usually how it starts. And you know, even therapists, and when the Alcoholics Anonymous first came here, there were some therapy, they were really good therapists, but they couldn't understand the concept that once you're in a journey of recovery, you cannot have even one drink in your entire life, because when there is one, there is another, and you're going to be taking it not only to the ones who are healed alcoholics and have taken these medications that would prevent them from having alcohol, because if they have a sip of alcohol they can die from it. No, it's because of the psychological addiction, because when you have one sip you will have another and you can have a relapse. And they didn't understand. This is how embedded in our society this is, that they don't understand that this is how the addiction works. And because they are drinking themselves, they don't have to be alcoholics, but they're drinking themselves, and they find it something that is acceptable because it's everywhere. This is something that is acceptable. Every now and then you go and have fun with your friends, and then you get drunk to have fun. I mean, I could never understand something like that. I never felt, as somebody who is sober around people who get drunk, I have the least of fun because it's not funny at all. It doesn't feel funny. Their jokes or anything don't feel funny to me, or their behavior or anything, because they allow themselves to do things that normally they wouldn't, because they use it to loosen up control. And this is why there is a lot of mental disease there, because it comes out. And when you have some kind of mental disease, or you're a little bit mentally unstable and you don't know it, and you do this, and it's going to enhance your mental disease, because there is no block, there is no control. Your mental mind can't keep control there. And this is why all kinds of shitty things happen, and very dangerous things. They can be dangerous then. And this is the biggest problem, because very heavy stuff, like I said, can happen there, and I deal with it all the time. I deal with it with my clients. I listen about that in my sessions, and I deal with it in my life, and I still deal with it after so many years. And I'm still dealing with the bad decisions that my father was making, and the bad decisions he still doesn't know how to make decisions. He still doesn't have, somehow they lack ability to connect with people emotionally. It breaks these connections. They're unhealthy connections, energetic connections are unhealthy. And also in some families, that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean that there's no love. It's just that it's unhealthy love. And as a society here, and especially, all around the world, this is acceptable all over. We don't know what healthy love is. We need to learn that. So I also find, when I speak to my colleagues about some clients and about some of the things that are basically the behavior of either a past addict or alcoholic, or somebody who's a child of an addict and alcoholic, who behave like children still because they don't have the capacity. They've never learned some of the skills, social skills they needed to learn from their parents. I find a lot of judgment because we constantly deal with these heavy energies, especially if you don't clear it from yourself. You're going to be finding resenting your clients. And this is why I really find very little empathy with my colleagues for these kind of energies and people, because they do carry a lot of heavy energy and they can get obnoxious sometimes because they behave like children. And at that moment they are children. Internally they are children. They're still children. They're still locked in that trauma. That part of them didn't grow up, and you have to help them to grow up. And sometimes they don't want to. They're going to be fighting you to not grow up. About all they need is just love, not that judgment. And of course you can't love them as a parent or anything. I do I deal with my brother all the time. I'm not his mother, I'm his sister, but I have to perform stuff for him that his mother would perform, because though he had love from his mother, he didn't have enough love from his father. And yeah, it gets hard. It's harder when it's in your family line than with your clients, but they do all sorts of drama stuff to get you pulled into their game. It's a game. It's a psychological game. And when you're in therapy with somebody, it's not, you shouldn't be playing games with them. They have to have boundaries, and they don't know boundaries because their boundaries are have been, ruptured. And yeah, that is the problem, because everybody's immature there. And you have to make an effort constantly to grow up, to mature. Some people don't want to do that. And the thing is, when they don't want to do that, there's absolutely nothing you can do. Sometimes you can remove yourself from the equation, and sometimes you can stay away. Sometimes it's harder because you're still part of that energetic system. You cannot not feel it. It's not real. It's not reality. So some things will be painful because it's a whole lot of love that is needed there. And yeah, you still need a whole lot of love. Like I said, I never experienced ever anybody telling me that they're proud of me. Although I say to myself that I'm proud of myself, but it's kind of a little bit different when you actually have proper support and you can bloom properly. And I do find myself feeling, I don't feel guilty, but I resent them when I want to go for a vacation and I feel good, and then when I have good stuff for myself and when I feel okay, and they don't feel okay. They're constantly miserable. And especially my brother, who cannot do things without somebody. He's independent, but he can't travel without somebody. He has somebody to take him or something. And then when you have more experiences than him that he cannot have because he's not like other people, yeah, it's gonna show, and they're gonna be making you feel guilty because of that, and it's gonna be unconscious. They're not gonna tell you that they resent you because of it, but they do, because you're healthy and they're not. And the thing is, the game is that you recognize it and don't get triggered by it, but sometimes it's hard. And yeah, they're not going to be letting you. If they're feeling miserable all the time, they're going to be resenting you and hating you because you're not feeling miserable. They're going to be doing everything they can so that you do feel miserable. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about they're not healthy and they don't want to heal. And that's, I haven't still found the solution for that other than removing and healing myself. And it's constantly, not push and pull, but that's what I meant when I said I pour it and it goes straight out somewhere. Less than before, but still. And that's my lesson, I guess, because I didn't come to only to heal that system. I came to heal something in me, but I came to promote different kind of life in this unhealthy system and show them with my example that it can be done even from that kind of circumstances. Living a different kind of life in this unhealthy system and different reality. This is what all of the spiritual teachers ever on this planet did, showing us that it can be done from the circumstances that they're in. And yeah, that's not easy, but the spiritual journey is never easy. It's not all fun and games and unicorns and flowers and love and light, because there are a whole lot of times when you're going to be dealing with a whole lot of things where there is no love, because you are pouring love into that system. It's been poured through you. And it's also your maturing from that system and changing it from the within. From why am I, my brain is doing something, so my mouth is faster than my brain and I'm not speaking proper English. So yeah, from within, you're changing it from within. And the only thing that actually needs to be dealt with are these emotions. And they're so very disconnected with the emotions that I mentioned: the grief, the pain, toxic shame, which that one is actually the worst one to tackle, guilt, and unworthiness, especially if there's been sexual trauma and a big abuse, big trauma, unworthiness and powerlessness. And many are not ready. They're disconnected from their emotions, and they do what they do. They get addicted into all these things because they want to avoid emotions. They want to avoid feeling. They, even when they stop that they use other things as an addiction, like spiritual bypassing. That becomes an addiction. Spirituality becomes an addiction, or something else becomes an addiction, so that they avoid it to feel precisely what they need to feel to be healing it. I find resistance in myself to do this. I find resistance to feel all sad and depressed and I want to cry. And then the problem is that I focus so much on that problem. I focus so much on that feeling. I focus so much on that not knowing what to do and how to heal it and how to get out of it, so that I don't forget to focus on the solution, because sometimes I don't see the solution. That's a problem. So I lose focus, not knowing on what to focus on. And I have to focus on the path, on the divine, on growth, on soul. And yeah, gets hard sometimes. So I'm never praised for my accomplishments. My accomplishments are never seen as an accomplishment, not even from my family, not even from my neighbors, because I don't have enough money. I didn't get rich. I was a really good student, but I didn't get rich because of that. And I'm single. I was never even close of having a family, because I look I'm looking for love and health together. And being somebody who's lived in abuse, it's not that I promote anybody to being single and alone. That's not what I'm saying. But that's not the worst thing that can happen to you in life. The worst thing that can happen to you is living with somebody who is abuser, who is mentally unstable, because it's dangerous. And I've seen it myself. I've seen it in other clients. Had clients that got guns pulled on them by people they thought they did love, but it turned into something else. It's living with a disease and having sick children, or having a child die on you. That's, I think, but that's also experience, that's also life, that's something their souls choose, and they deal with that all the time. My soul chose something else, but that doesn't mean it didn't choose love. It's just that I'm still in this system where I didn't find somebody who chose to get out of that disease. This is why my previous relationships didn't work into what I wanted it to go to, because they didn't choose to get out of them the problem, out of them. Yeah, addiction. Let's say addiction's the truth. The addiction they were in, and I don't want to. And when you're constantly pouring in new energy and you're growing, the other part needs to grow with you. And when it comes to some things that it's hard to deal with, it needs conscious effort and communication that sometimes there is no willingness on the other part to do. It doesn't mean it's impossible, it's not going to happen. I'm not saying that I haven't given up on that. It's just that I'm saying that's how I view reality, and that's how my experience shaped me. And that doesn't mean I don't make compromises and I'm not willing to put in. I do also have a tendency to have, this, like any. I mean, I was working on that, but I'm noticing it in other people who are my friends or my clients who were children of alcoholics, or had some abusers in their family. They we have a tendency not to notice to accept the behavior that is basically unacceptable, and we don't even recognize it, because they have a tendency to wanting to run away from their family and the trauma that they're experiencing there. They run away somewhere else thinking that it's going to be better somewhere else. They're going to be feeling better, they're going to be accepted, they're going to be loved somewhere else. It doesn't mean it doesn't start like that, but they don't always know the circumstances where they're going. They don't judge it properly. They don't see it and understand it. They don't know how to recognize addiction, abuse, or other things that are inappropriate. And this is why I'm sharing all this. This is why I'm speaking about it. Because I worked a lot on myself to be able to understand, to create my own boundaries. And it doesn't mean that I'm not willing to let others in, but I want a mentally healthy person. Because actually the worst thing that can happen to you is to live with a mentally unhealthy person that is not willing to heal. And it's not only immaturity, it's mental disease and instability can create a whole lot of problems, like I just explained now, especially when it's not, if it's socially acceptable, if it's not something that protrudes and it creates like a whole lot of drama and trauma and whatever, and it's only kept within the confines of the family. So yeah, if you're when you're choosing a partner, whether you're male or female, so you're choosing male, you're male or choosing female partner, you should first look for somebody who's mentally stable, because it's your, well, I'm not going to be calling this an investment. It's not an investment, it's love. You're going to be loving somebody. And of course that, when it's coming from the heart, but then there are the things that can pull you there, especially with a man, that it's not always love. You know, I'm yet to find to meet a person, a man, who is looking in a woman maturity, who, like emotional and psychological and spiritual maturity, because it's really a lot more important what a woman has in her heart and inside than her appearance. And that's quite a big lesson. I've seen it in my clients, I've seen it in people that I know. It's quite a big lesson for everybody. And it's not only for men, it's for women too, but I see more men falling for this because they don't think with their head, or they don't even think with their heart when it comes to that. I'm not gonna say, but you know where I'm aiming at. Think with something else when it comes to women, especially lately, where there are, everything is like I said once, in a candy shop. So it's a whole lot of promotion of nakedness and everything. So it's so far more important what a woman has inside, and a man too, as you see. Because for a woman, a man can create a whole lot of problems in your life. It can abuse you, it can beat you, it can, And there are some women that still put up with that. And it's hard when you can't recognize all these signs. And even if you don't, and if you get into something like that, it's okay. It doesn't mean that you can't, there is no help. It doesn't mean you can change that. You can, but it's the most important thing to understand is you cannot change the other person. Not even when it's your child. Not even when it's your parent, as you see from my example. Not even when it's your brother. Especially not when it's your spouse. Your spouse is a partner, is the last person that you're going to change. The thing is that with alcoholics and the codependency in relations, there is that the other partner, whether male or female, they constantly expect that the other person will change. If they love them, they will stop doing this or this. They can't, because it's a disease, it's an addiction. It doesn't have anything to do whether they love you or don't. They're sick. They have to do it for themselves first. They have to want to change this themselves. So that's one of the issues, one of the biggest issues with everybody. I see this with my clients. They constantly come in with their issues. They want somebody else. They want somebody else to change. They want something else to change. They want something outside to change. You can only change yourself, and you can change your inside, your inner world, and then something changes outside and it shifts. Yes, I've seen, since I'm doing this work, and I've seen a lot of changes in my family. But there are some things like this, what I'm speaking about, that I didn't create this problem. And I am changing myself. But eventually, I'm going to change myself, and I don't fit there anymore. I can't fit in. I don't want to be sick. They don't want to be healthy. And there's nothing you can do there. You can love them from afar. And one of the things that just came through my mind when I was speaking, that is good to know where it is. It's here. I'm having a problem with this tooth now. Like I said, teeth are ancestry. So I think when it's in the lineage, there's usually one where it started, where this started. And when you find this thread where this started, then you can heal it. You higher beings can heal it and fix it and patch it up. How? I yet don't know, but that's, I'm feeling it through my channel. That's what's been going on with me lately, and that's what's been healing and clearing, and this is why I had to speak about it, because as I speak, it's been healing and clearing, and then I help others too through sharing my experience. Yeah, I want healthy love of all kinds in my reality. And this is why some things could not take root in my energy field, my hologram, in spite of me wishing it for different outcomes. And I guess that's good, but it's not feeling good all the time. And all of the other problems that I've been speaking about, that I have really realized that all these people, especially men that had astral stalkers and stuff like that, they were all drinking. When you do drink, you can't. When you do spiritual work, when you do any kind of spiritual work, when you work with other people, whether you're a therapist, psychotherapist, or energy healer or something, herbalist, you can't drink, period. You can't drink. You can't abuse a psychedelic that you're working with. You can't put alcohol, sometimes once in a couple of months, one glass of something, that's not going to hurt, but you can't drink and you can't get drunk. You can't do that all the time. It doesn't go together, period. Especially if you're moving a lot of other people's energy and you're a big channel, and you know, because you're allowing something else in your channel. And God, people who are working with spaces and radiesthesia, for instance, with pendulums. No, oh God. And with a whole lot of entities and stuff around there. And I'm seeing that all the time. It is happening. People don't think that's a problem. And that's exactly the problem, because nobody thinks that this is the problem. And this is what's creating the problem. And they hate somebody from their family line, whether that's a father or grandfather or somebody who was doing that. I don't know what it takes for this to be healed on a collective level. I'm not there yet. I don't know. But yeah, I've seen it. It's being cleared from a collective field. And the cure is love. And spiritual a whole lot of aware and awakened souls, embodiment of your soul. And love, so much love. Because the problem is that there is no love in this problem. This is why all of this was possible to happen, especially when this creates all other traumas, with all the other feelings and emotions that is happening there. It doesn't necessarily have to be your somebody from your family, or it's usually, yeah, it can be your partner, but doesn't necessarily have to be that somebody who's going to be showing you so much unconditional love. That's what's going to heal. This is what I do for my clients. But honestly, I have experienced a whole lot of judgment because of what I do from all of these unhealthy people around me. And I constantly encounter them, and this is another topic that I'm going to be speaking about another time. But especially, I don't know whether that's the case abroad or somewhere in this area here, because of a lot of war traumas. Not only because of alcoholism and stuff, in mental disease, war trauma is what creates all this disease. And a lack of connection with the feminine part of God, goddess, because it is different. It works with you differently. It guides you differently. It helps you grow differently. It whispers. It nurtures. It's tender. And all these other energies that are male, they're not all necessarily dominant, but it's different. And especially there is a lack of connection with these energies, because there's a big disconnect. Because not only because the feminine energy has been so suppressed, but because also, not only because there are not enough healed men, there are not enough mentally healthy women and healed women with powers. There are no women with spiritual powers, period, because they have been wiped out. You all know that history, so not enough. That kind of feminine goddess, healed energy, power in men or women equally. And they're picked on and targeted, as I mentioned, precisely because of this, because of all of these unhealed people and beings around them. And what's the solution? Yeah, the solution is happening. We are experiencing now, we are living it now, but everything that is clearing is coming to the surface. So the solution, again, is love. And from what I've seen from most of my clients that were coming lately, conscious connection with the goddess. She's much unhappy because of the things that have been happening with children, that all these experiences that her children went through. And this is not me speaking. But it is happening, and there's absolutely nothing that is going to stop it. Then it might just get rougher at some points because of the resistance. All of the healing has certain resistance, and that's what I've seen as therapist in every client and in myself. So yeah, so is there anything else? No, I think this is all. Yeah. Yeah, I spoke for a while, so whoever listens to this, whoever came to the end of this, thank you. But you obviously needed it a lot, and yeah, it needed to be said. And I can't do parts of it because I just lose track of it and lose the stream, and it has to be done like this. And when I'm going to be making another one, I don't know. There is another thing that came up to the surface that I need to talk about because it's been around here, it's been used a lot, abused lately, so I have to mention it. But when I feel it. And thank you very much for your attention, your time, your patience with all this. Thank you. Much love.